Hello, welcome. You are with Dr. Sushma Singh. Today in Unit 13, Ecology, Environment and Development, we are going to start lecture with the topic Internationalization of Environmental Concerns. With the increased internationalization of environmental concerns, Leighton Caldwell notes that the doctrines of dogmas of inalienable national sovereignties are being modified de facto to accommodate the imperatives of international environmental cooperation. In his opinion, nations need not lose their cultural identity and integrity by cooperating with other nations in matter of common necessity. Indeed, international environmental policy has been directed to protecting and restoring the cultural and ecological distinctiveness of nations. The question is not merely the linkage between the international environmental cooperation and national identity and sovereignty. One perceives an increasing tendency of contentious and debates on ecological issues at the global level on significant matters of sustainable development. The deliberation on sustainable development in various international fora and conferences recently were compelled to deal with questions of north-south divide and hierarchy. Wide-ranging differences persist due to a variety of issues like causes for global environmental degradation to the mechanism of arresting ecological crises. While some perceive underdevelopment of third world countries itself as a major cause of environmental damage, many advocates from these countries argue that the very process of development along the lines of industrial progress has been instrumental in unleashing a global ecological crisis. Third world spokespersons in international environmental negotiations demand that industrialized countries of the North should subsidize efforts of replacing environmentally polluting industries of the South. Responsibilities for global development, environmental crises like ozone layer depletion, greenhouse effect, etc., are still contentious issues between the North and the South. A critical international ecological perspective demands not only an urge to create newer and wider international environmental regimes to tackle specific problems, but also a commitment to transformatory politics which addresses global unequal power relations. The challenges to the nation-state system emanating from various quarters provide an ambivalent realm of perspectives from an ecological angle. Environmental activities and theoreticians conventionally argued that since the state an embodiment of coercive power and an instrument of accumulation of resources, it has to be replaced by local self-governing entities and ecologically sustainable communities. The accelerated onslaught of globalization forces on local and national lives of people and their environment pose new challenges to the development of a contemporary critical ecological perspective. In the changing global context, local communities find it extremely difficult to stop the plundering of their natural resources endowments by transnational corporations and agencies. Ecology movements, while realizing their own weakness due to their dissipated nature and the changing character of the nation state, are faced with the task of critically rethinking the linkage between the micropolitics of movements and macropolitics of the nation state and international affairs. Reinventing civil society and the state in new democratic ways is being proposed as the inevitable alternative route. The international perspective on ecology and sustainable development envisages transformatory politics challenging the existing processes of accumulation and hierarchies of power from local to global regimes. This politics of transformation envisions sustainability of nature and resources through the development of struggles to challenge forces which exploit humans and nature. Such a perspective looks for meaningful and organic democratic local global linkages with a bottom up approach. Now let us start the next and last topic of the unit. Participatory approach for the management of natural resources. Different conceptions and debates on environment development connections by conservationist, developmentalist, women activists, tribals, and other marginalized groups reveals that each one has a different position or emphasis on issues such as conservation, subsistence needs of the poor, particularly women, economic growth model and sustainability of critical resources, threats to ecosystem and issue of equality and distribution of costs and benefit in the management of natural resources. The focus on the environment development connection has reframed the issues of control and management of natural resources as it reflects the demands of the global economy, which are pitted against the people's claim to traditional rights and their livelihood. As political and economic battle intensify, livelihood interests and commercial interests are locked in never-ending contradictions and may not be easily reconciled. Over the years, various approaches for natural resources management have been outlined, both formal and informal arrangements, to support the participatory processes on the grounds of efficiency, involving local people and building a partnership between the state and the community through appropriate institutional arrangements. Within the agenda of decentralized management of natural resources, one can identify several institutional arrangements such as self-initiated user groups, formal community groups established through government initiatives, and institutions of local self-government. These local institutional arrangements shape the choices, priorities, and bargaining system to change state community dynamics. Community management of local resources or a decentralized strategy has assumed importance as it is expected to protect livelihoods and lead to a more sustainable management of resources. Another argument often made in defense of community management of natural resources relates to the indigenous women's knowledge systems, which are embedded in a particular community or context. Shiva argues third world women, tribal and peasants act as intellectual gene pool of ecological categories of thought and action. Women's responses to environmental issues are mediated by their livelihood system, division of labor, and unequal access to productive resources and knowledge and information. Local NGOs have tried to build alternatives for management of the local resource base and link issues of gender equality to issues of social justice, poverty, and indigenous people's rights. The argument for the social justice and local people's rights are based on the premise that the local communities have a greater stake in the sustainable use of resources and are better positioned to respond and adapt to specific social and ecological conditions and incorporate local interest and preference. They are also conversant with the local ecological practices and processes and can manage the resources through traditional forms of access and management. During the last 2 decades, natural resource management and biodiversity conservation have emerged as major priorities within countries and among donor agencies. People oriented, rhetoric, and community based natural resource management have become part of a strategy for bringing nations into line with global resource management initiatives. Now let us have glimpse on the conclusion of the unit. The boundaries of environmental concerns are fast disappearing. Local global linkages in ecological perspective and movements are becoming more pronounced, while different sections of people and communities all over the are raising issues of environment and survival through movements. Nation states are engaging in international deliberation and conferences for developing international protocols and creating international environmental regimes. A meaningful attempt at grasping ecological politics of our time has to understand and respond to the emerging conflictual and conceptual dynamics within and between the local global parameters. Sustainable development is a conceptual and policy arena where con- contestants on a variety of local global factors occur. There is a need to decipher proper ecological perspective in more concrete terms. This unit delineates the interrelationship between ecology, environment, and development. It analyzes how the question of ecology and environment are addressed in social theory. We understood most responses to the environmental crisis will remain at best superficial and palliative unless there is a universal recognition that our species is an integral part of nature, that we must recognize the latter's limit. This understanding has profound implications for the kind of future society and polity that needs to be established. It also has profound implications for arenas as diverse as the content and direction of ideology, development, technological choices, and consumer freedom. The unit also makes an attempt to look into the mammoth proportions of the environmental crisis caused by the development practices presently adopted. And we understood the urgency of the need to find solution to this crisis posed tremendous challenges to develop coherent, rational, and ecological perspectives. Finally, an alternative paradigm for the management of resources also have been explored in this unit. Here we want to close this lecture as well as unit. Thanks for patientful hearing.